Here's your daily rundown, November 16, 2018. Local and national news by KPPP. Hey everybody, this is Cindy.
And this is Duke.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPP-LP Fargo-Moorhead, where we're adding local color to your airwaves. In local news, a 47-year-old woman arrested over the weekend at a restaurant in Fargo bit on two police officers, according to one news report, and suffered an eye injury as one of the officers restrained her, according to authorities. That happened on September 9th, after Moorhead police were sent to a Buffalo Wild Wings on 2201 2nd Avenue North for a report that a woman armed with a handgun was making suicidal comments. Witnesses told the police that the woman, later identified as Jen Thomas, arrived at the restaurant around 7 p.m. and started speaking with people at the bar, making comments that she was going to kill herself. As she grew increasingly emotionally distressed, police were called to the scene and found that the woman had a BB gun, not a real handgun, according to court documents. The officers then claimed that they placed a seatbelt around Thomas in the squad car, where she tried to spit on an officer's face, and she had to be pepper sprayed to gain control of the situation. Thomas was then taken to Sanford Medical Facility, Sanford Hospital, where, according to police, she again became agitated, spit on another officer's face. This according to Moorhead Police Deputy Tori Jacobson. And as the officers restrained her, they claimed that she hit the bed, the side of the bed, and injured her own eye. All of this turns out to not have been correct. According to an article that you can find on kpppfm.com, researched by yours truly, Cindy Gomez-Schempp, Jen Thomas was assaulted by 33-year-old Officer Matt Lambert of the Moorhead Police Department on September 9 after the police were called to that Buffalo Wild Wings for her suicidal ideations. Officers did take Thomas to Sanford Health, where, while handcuffed to a bed, Officer Lambert assaulted her with his elbow, breaking her nose and leaving her with a black right eye. Court documents originally stated that as officers tried to place a seatbelt around Thomas in a squad car, she spit in an officer's face and that she had to be pepper sprayed. Moorhead Police Chief Deputy Tori Jacobson added that when at Sanford Health, she, quote, again became agitated and spit in another officer's face, and that, quote, as the officers restrained Thomas, her head hit the side of a bed, resulting in the injury to her eye. Further investigation revealed that detectives found it was actually Officer Lambert who struck Thomas with his elbow while she was handcuffed. Although Lambert was arrested and charged with a crime, no mugshot was available of the officer's arrest, and the Moorhead PD declined to comment. He was placed on administrative leave. But Moorhead PD and the City Council knew since April of 2016 that Lambert had assaulted another unarmed woman during a welfare check in Moorhead. Cop Block has previously featured Officer Lambert, who in April of 2016 assaulted Isabel Escobedo during a welfare check at her home. You can view the story in the video in which Lambert holds a handcuffed Escobedo while she yells his name and badge number to her friend, videotaping, who was also allegedly assaulted by police that day, by going to kpppfm.com. After the incident occurred in April, KPPP-LP radio reported the story of Escobedo, who allegedly reported ongoing harassment by police in Moorhead and the neighboring city of Fargo due to her initial reports of police abuse of power after her 15-year-old daughter was arrested by 13 cops claiming they smelled marijuana emanating out of the vehicle they dragged her out of. The story made national news and embarrassed the Fargo Police Department, who had to take down their Facebook page due to the negative press about their arrest of Escobedo's daughter. All charges were later dropped against Escobedo's minor daughter, but harassment by police did not end, including the use of a SWAT team, a traffic stop where cops pulled 3 handguns and pointed them at passengers, including a 3-year-old toddler. The brutal incident involving Officer Matt Lambert in April of 2016 was reported to the Moorhead City Council and Mayor at the time. Then Chief Ebinger denied the incident reported to the council the next day on radio station KFGO. Duke reminded me, as we prepared for our new news broadcast today, on this story that Mike Hewlett, city councilman, became hostile during the Moorhead City Council meeting on April 25, 2016, when Duke told the council about Officer Lambert's assault on Isabel Escobedo. Rather than ensuring the incident was investigated, then Chief Ebinger decided to take to KFGO radio the next day to deny the incident, even though there was video evidence to the contrary. According to Lambert's first victim, the April assault was the latest in a string of police harassment complaints she'd suffered at the hands of both Fargo and Moorhead PD after reports of excessive force used against her 15-year-old daughter made national headlines. Duke, you recall the heated conversation between you and Mike Hewlett at that council meeting in April of 2016?
Yes, in fact, the reason we were there was we were going to support the Human Rights Commission being reinstated in the city of Moorhead. And we were asked to give testimony. I thought was a very appropriate time to bring up an issue where a local community member had been assaulted by police and had no way to take that complaint to any sort of body to hear what happened to her. So I brought the information to the council. And as I spoke about it, Mike Hewlett got very, very mad that, like, this can't be happening. And he asked the city attorney, "Is this true? Have you seen this incident report?" And the city attorney says, "No, there's been no report filed." And I said, I got to talk again, and I said, the reason is there is no way for a citizen to file a complaint. You can file a complaint with the police department, with the police overseeing it on their website, but a lot of people don't feel safe doing that, and we think that the Human Rights Commission would be a best place for that to come because it's a different entity and different accountability. Mm-hmm. The guy was very, very irate that I would bring this up. He, said he was doing all these great things for the community, and this community never does anything like that. And he was looking around for some sort of support from the other council members. I remember Mary Daly said, "Hey, I want to hear what Duke has to say," and she gave me the floor back so I could talk longer. I looked at the minutes. I thought, well, what did they put in the minutes? I looked up the minutes on the Moorhead City's website, and it says, minutes from Moorhead City Council, April 25th, 2016. Duke Gomez-Schempp, Executive Director of the People's Press Project, supports the Human Rights Commission, and meeting monthly would be important. He also discussed incidents involving the Moorhead Police Department that he believed were inappropriate.
They never made mention of the actual assault. It was the assault of Isabel Escobedo.
Yeah, it was, and
And it says Mike Hewlett hostile.
Yeah, Mike Hewlett is hostile. I didn't put that in the minutes. I put that in for my own notes, but they do film the city council meetings, so you could see the testimony, but they don't record them in the minutes. So you would have to go back to that date and watch their 5-hour council meeting and actually see that. So it is recorded somewhere, whether it's actually watched or viewed. And like you said, just a couple days later, Chief Ebinger went out and he was interviewed by KFGO, and he said it was fabrication, that they know this individual and they've had history with her. And what I was saying was completely false. It was totally a lie. And I thought, why did this news station never contact me? So I actually wrote to them after that, and I said, why didn't you contact me on this story? And they never actually responded.
Well, we did get a response from Isabel Escobedo. Here's a quote from her as to this newest incident. She said, "Oh my God, I was in shock, but not surprised at all. The same police officer that beat my face in, whom we put on YouTube, now has another victim. The same officer who assaulted Jen Thomas assaulted me on that YouTube video. His name is Matt Lambert. That's the name I'm yelling in the YouTube video, M. Lambert. I'm just so upset right now." And we do have the audio, and clip from that audio, where you can hear her saying just that. Here it is.
I need to make sure what's going on with her.
Stay back and you can find out whatever you want.
Why we're here is to help.
There's nothing happening to me. I've been on my phone with
Okay,
people.
you understand why we're here now? Okay? We got called here for domestic.
There's no man here.
We didn't know that.
203
Okay?
Dude, I just got pushed all over my arm. Look.
Charges. I'm pressing charges. And his name is M. Lambert.
What's his badge number?
Stay back.
What's his badge
If you
number?
interfere, then you're going to be in the same position.
What's his badge number?
319.
319, M. Lambert.
That was a friend of hers that was videotaping the whole incident. As you could hear, she also said that she got pushed around and left marked on her arm. This was reported recently in Valley News Live that Moorhead police officer Lambert was charged with a felony count of aggravated assault after the incident where he broke Jen Thomas's nose and damaged the orbit of her eye at Sanford Health while she was handcuffed to the bed. This, of course, is after a welfare check, and much in the similar fashion, police were called to Isabel Escobedo's house in Moorhead in April of 2016 because somebody reported there was a domestic assault occurring at her house. That report was false, but it did not stop Officer Lambert and the other officer that was with him from forcing their way inside the home, handcuffing and assaulting Isabel Escobedo, breaking her lip, and also leaving her with marks on her face. And she also went to the hospital for other injuries. You can read the entire reports, again, by going to kpppfm.com, or you can check out our social media. I'll give you more directions to that at the end. What do you think about the fact that this story is now coming to light after this officer was basically defended in this way? Because you have to remember, the officers said originally she hurt herself. They lied about how she was injured. They said she assaulted them by spitting on them. I find that questionable now, given the fact that they lied about her hurting herself. It seems to me that they would want to say that they were also assaulted in some fashion to justify beating a 47-year-old woman that's handcuffed to a bed after people made a call for her welfare because she was suicidal.
Yeah. You know, and the thing I think about the most, this same officer had been beating people. He beat up Isabel Escobedo, and we brought it forth to the city council, the whole city council, and the mayor.
Mm-hmm. And the police chief was obviously made aware because he went on radio the next day to deny it.
Exactly. And so you let this officer over 2 years ago get away with abusing people in the community, police brutality. And here it is 2 years later, and the officer is doing the same sort of thing. You know, he got caught this time, or at least there was some sort of documentation that went into the press, whereas before with Isabel Escobedo, it never hit the press except for the chief of police defending his officers. And that's the reason we were at the city council meeting, is to encourage a way for citizens and community members to bring complaints forward in an environment that they would be heard instead of continue to be harassed and watched by the police.
Well, I think that the city has a liability issue here, given the fact that they knew about this officer's previous conduct and did nothing but try to deny and hide it. And in fact, it looks like they tried to do the same thing this time.
Mm-hmm.
In other news, we've got some news about the recreational marijuana.
That's right. More the recreational marijuana news in North Dakota. As you remember, they had a ballot initiative to make marijuana recreational in North Dakota, and it failed. And they do have medical marijuana, but it's been, as we reported in previous programs, that it's been years of dragging their feet and trying to authorize dispensaries and also those sorts of things. And there's some newly elected legislators, and in Fargo, recreational marijuana may have failed on election night, but one legislator is starting the process of decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana. Fargo Representative Shannon Rose Jones is working on decriminalizing possession of small amounts of marijuana in plants, reducing the punishment to a fine. The amount would be anything less than an ounce, and the fine would be about $200. They wouldn't continue to have a record, and it wouldn't affect their ability to find housing or employment and obtain professional licenses into the future, said Representative Shannon Rose Jones, Republican in Fargo. Rose Jones says other legislators are interested in co-sponsoring the bill, but they want to wait and see a finished draft.
That's encouraging. A Republican in Fargo is working to decriminalize small amounts of marijuana.
Yeah, and you know, it's quite surprising. I don't know how far we'll go because if you remember, the legislature itself took the medical marijuana bill and gutted it and redid it and made it a lot more restrictive. So they aren't showing an interest in decriminalizing marijuana. But I think it's great that a Republican legislator is out there looking at some of the issues and also making it so it doesn't affect your ability to get employment or housing in the future. I think it's a great start in decriminalization in North Dakota.
I think it's a really important step. Not for nothing, but just to go backwards in the storytelling here, the Isabel Escobedo story that we just told you about and Jen Thomas story, both of whom were assaulted by Officer Matt Lambert of the Moorhead Police Department. In Escobedo's case, the harassment that she suffered from both Fargo and Moorhead police stemmed from a report in which her daughter, her 15-year-old daughter, was dragged out of a parked vehicle, which she was not driving at the time, and which doors had been left open, where she was retrieving a cell phone that was left in there charging, because cops said that they, quote-unquote, smelled pot, weed, marijuana. And for this, they basically arrested her with 13 different squad cars were sent out there to have her arrested. And she was hogtied and thrown into the back of a squad car while her mother was also, and many other people in the family were threatened with handguns, tasers, etc. The harassment of those family members continued. Those who viewed it, those who videotaped it, and those who reported to the local media what had happened. In fact, after we reported on it and it made national news, the harassment escalated. And so all of that stemmed from this alleged pot charge, which turned out they didn't have. They didn't move forward with those criminal charges against this girl. Because I think it was, an excuse to harass and police people in the mobile home park where this arrest took place. We did other interviews with residents of that area that said that the tactic the police used on Isabel's daughter was very similar to tactics they had seen used by police in the area before. Taking that tool away from the police, I think, would be a good step toward decreasing the over-profiling of people of color and the criminalization of people of color in our community.
Most definitely.
In national news, and this is big, CNN has reported that judges have ordered the White House to return Jim Acosta's press pass. CNN's Jim Acosta has returned to his post at the White House following a court ruling that forced the Trump administration to reinstate his press pass. Now President Trump is vowing to create rules and regulations for how White House reporters can act. He said, quote, "You have to practice decorum at the White House." Wow, I don't think he got the memo.
Yeah.
Or Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Exactly.
CNN goes on to report that President Trump said it's not a big deal. What they said, though, is that we have to create rules and regulations for conduct, etc. We're going to write them up. It's not a big deal. If he misbehaves, we'll throw him out and we'll stop the news conference. Friday's ruling by federal judge Thomas J. Kelly was an initial victory for CNN in its lawsuit against Trump and several top aides. The suit alleges that CNN and Acosta's First and Fifth Amendment rights were violated by the last week's suspension of his press pass. I just want to stop there to note that President Trump was talking about the ruling by Kelly in which he stated that first of all, let me just say that the ruling was made on injunctive relief request by the CNN attorney.
Okay.
So in addition to the lawsuit for the violation of the First and Fifth Amendment rights of Jim Acosta that have been permanently damaged as a result of what the White House has done. In addition to that, they asked for immediate injunctive relief, which is that the judge order the White House to return the press passes before he makes an eventual ruling, before this case goes forward, if it does go forward, and they make a ruling on whether or not the First and Fifth Amendment rights were violated. And the reason that a judge would do that is because the allegations by CNN and Jim Acosta is that he is being harmed, and every day that passes, more harm is mounting, and liability requires that you try to ameliorate your damages, that you try to mitigate damages. And so here the court is stepping in and saying, if you do not return the press pass of this man, your damages are going to increase from here on out. And my review of the lawsuit so far is that they're probably going to win. So the outcome at the end of all of this is that you will have done irrecoverable damage to Jim Acosta and CNN, the damages will be likely paid out in a monetary fashion. But the point of all of this is that the judge said he's giving the order for them to return the press passes so that they no longer are harming him while this lawsuit awaits going forward. Returning to the article, it says, Kelly did not rule. Oh, one more thing. Let me just say that the judge in this case, which, by the way, is a Trump appointee, the judge in this case said that because there is due process in place, there is a process by which the White House and the Secret Service specifically authorizes people to have press passes. The main basis of not giving someone a press pass or rescinding a press pass is an immediate threat to the safety of the president, his family, or his staff. Since none of those things are true in the case of Acosta or CNN's journalists, there was no way for them to apply that standard in removing his press credentials. So what they did was arbitrary, and it violated their own rules. And according to those rules, if and when the press passes are revoked, they need to notify the news agency and the reporter of that first, try to resolve the issue with them. And there's a process by which they have the press credentials removed if the violator does not come to some mutual arrangement with the White House. None of those steps were undertaken by the White House before removing his press credentials. So they violated due process, and they're likely to lose the lawsuit if it goes forward. Those are the big takeaways. Continuing with the article, Kelly, the judge, said that he did not rule, on the underlying case this Friday, but granted CNN's request for a temporary restraining order on Fifth Amendment grounds and said he believes CNN and Acosta are likely to prevail in the case overall. Quote, "Let's go back to work," said Acosta in a brief comment outside of the courthouse after the ruling. Later in the day, he arrived at the White House and received his Secret Service hard pass, the press pass that was taken from him 9 days ago. He's expected to appear on CNN for one of his usual live shots on Friday evening. CNN versus Trump is an important test of press freedom in the U.S. Kelly seemed well aware of the high stakes, reading his written opinion from the bench for nearly 20 minutes Friday morning. He sided with CNN on the basis of the suit's Fifth Amendment claims, saying the White House did not provide Acosta with due process required to legally revoke his pass. He left open the possibility the White House could seek to revoke Acosta's pass again if it provided due process. That may be why Trump is talking about implementing rules. Yes, that, I believe, is exactly why President Trump is saying that they will put rules into place, because the only rules that are in place right now, again, were not violated, and they didn't notify Acosta that any rules were violated before they just yanked his passes. So I think Trump and the White House believe that if they put out a set of rules for what you can and can't do at a press conference, that then if Jim Acosta or any other journalist violates their rules, they can go through the process of notifying that, hey, you're doing the thing that we said you couldn't do, to giving them an opportunity to stop doing the thing for fear of losing their press credentials, and 3, removing journalists whose questions they don't like. But I am here to tell you, Duke, that's not how the law works.
Yeah, and that they think they're above the law, and the idea that they're just going to make up new rules. what they're going to do the next press conference, say, here are the ground rules, and they're called the Acosta rules, and going to sit there and make up some stuff that they can actually control who's in the room, what they say, and warn everybody not to be asking these questions that they don't want to answer, otherwise they'll get booted out. And the idea, too, that Trump, during that press conference wanted to walk away. He walked away from the podium, but he stopped himself and came back and started berating Acosta. And it's like I've heard that he said that he'll just walk out. He'll just walk out of the press conference and end the press conference if somebody is breaking the rules. So it's like I look forward to seeing the press conferences. It would have been great if they would have filmed Acosta getting his press pass back.
Yeah, I hope
it would have been great for them to walk in and say, "I'm here, give it to me," and they're like, "Okay, we'll have to phone upstairs and find someone who knows about this." And it would have been good to see that whole thing happening.
Well, I think President Trump and Sarah Sanders are very disheartened by this ruling, not just because Acosta will be back in the press room asking them those tough questions, but also because President Trump has taken a lot of losses since the midterm elections and is, facing down Mueller's questions as well as possible indictments coming soon. So the fact that he was so testy with Acosta had a lot to do with the fact that Acosta was asking him about the Mueller probe.
Yep.
That's exactly why he stopped and walked off the podium, threatening to leave the press conference. So, he definitely is going to feel this like a kick to the gut. And so will Sanders, because, they will have to face the music, as it were, in those press conferences coming forward. Judge Kelly criticized the blacklisting of Acosta, saying that it was, quote, shrouded in mystery, and noting that the Justice Department lawyer in the case couldn't even say who had ordered the decision to remove his press pass. But he also said that he was not making a judgment on the First Amendment claims that CNN and Acosta have made. Despite all of that, Sarah Sanders said in a statement, "Today, the court made clear that there is no absolute First Amendment right to access the White House." The judge did not make that clear. Sarah Sanders cannot tell the truth.
Well, she's a master of a spin. She's. You just said right there, the judge was not ruling on the First Amendment part of this case. He was making a decision on the Fifth Amendment, the due process question. And I think Sanders and Trump, when they spew this stuff out there, they think that the public is really stupid and doesn't have any other source of hearing information. They wish that is true, but that's how they act, so, they can just spin something the way they want. And it shows that they're kind of unraveling and falling apart, and they're being held accountable for the first time in the past 2 years.
That's true. And Sanders isn't just being held accountable by this decision. She's also lied about the reason for Acosta's dismissal from the press conference, initially claiming that Acosta had inappropriately touched a White House intern. And the judge in this case said he felt that claim was, quote, likely untrue, a polite way of calling her a liar, and Trump as well, and said, quote, partly based on evidence of questionable accuracy. He's referring there to the doctored InfoWars video tweeted by Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders to bolster her claim that Acosta had assaulted an intern. Acosta only held on to a microphone when the intern tried to take it away during a presidential news conference last week. And later that day, the correspondence access was then suspended. Judge Kelly also noted that Trump may never call on Acosta again, but that's not relevant in this decision, saying that there needed to be due process regarding the press pass. What do you think about Sarah Huckabee Sanders backpedaling on her claim that the intern, a woman, was injured and the President Trump and his administration will not stand for women being injured or assaulted? Yeah,
it's so naive because everything was filmed. We could all see what happened. So when she came out with that claim, and then people are like, well, that's not the way I remember seeing it. And then some people put the videos side by side to show that one was sped up and it made it look like he was karate chopping her arm. You know, she never apologized for that. She never came out and said I was erroneous in putting that video out, and we will let the courts and counsel decide on this, because that's what she says to the reporters whenever they ask her a question about the president or any sort of pending litigation. She'll always defer to outside counsel, or you know, you'll have to take that up with them. But she put that out there, you know, right away with a defense, and you know, then never mentioned it again. It's like it went away. I didn't really do that. You all forgot, right?
I don't know if Trump chooses people in his administration who are like him, and by that I mean liars, pathological liars, or if they're already pathological liars and that's why he chooses them. Either way, I think both Sanders and Trump are going to double down on their, you know, ignoring of the First Amendment, on their chilling effect on the press, because they insist that they're going to have new orders, rules and procedures to ensure a fair and orderly press conferences in the future. Decorum must be had in the White House. They talk as if they believe that the White House is a church or a hospital. Trump said people have to behave when asked about their defeat in court. He said if they, meaning reporters like Acosta, don't listen to the rules and regulations, we'll end up back in court and we'll win. But more importantly, we'll just leave, meaning stop taking questions from the press. And then you won't be very happy because we do get good ratings, Trump said about himself in the third person.
Wow.
That to me is something that is so incredible, that a president would say that if he doesn't get to throw out anyone from the press conferences, that he rarely calls, and that Sarah Sanders rarely call anyway, that he simply won't have press conferences anymore. He simply won't answer questions. He simply will not be accountable to the public, because he's a dictator. He's a fascist dictator. He is not a president elected by the American people. Or so it seems, because otherwise an elected official like Trump and Sarah Sanders herself are all accountable to the American people. And the fourth estate, the press in America, is that checks and balances on authority from the White House. Ted Boutros, one of the outside lawyers representing CNN in this case, said in an interview that the network is open to a resolution that could avoid further legal action. Who knows if they'll go forward with this lawsuit, saying, "We want to just simply move forward and let CNN and Jim Acosta gather news and report it. But what if the administration tries to implement intense restrictions on press corps or tries to revoke other press passes? I think we're ready to litigate as long as we have to protect these First Amendment rights, to ask the court to declare rules of the road going forward," Boutros said. In a statement about the ruling, CNN said, "We're gratified with the results and looking forward to a full resolution in the coming days. Our sincerest thanks to all who have supported not just CNN, but a free, strong, and independent American press." Well, I do have to say about that, Mexicans saw this coming a long time ago when Jorge Ramos was thrown out of a press conference early during President Trump's administration. And if you will recall, there was a deafening silence from the majority of the press in defending the right of Jorge Ramos to remain in the press conference, and also to ask the tough questions he had of President Trump about his anti-immigrant policies and views.
That's right, and the press is like, even in this instance, they're being warned by Trump that you better just watch it. This happens, this guy acts up, you're all going to suffer. It's the bully in the room. And also it's one of those dysfunctions of mainly white people, is that you're not going to go to take any risks for one of your own. For anyone that's with you, you're going to let them hang out to dry and hope that you're not next. And I think they're falling into place. I remember that with Jorge Ramos, that no one said anything. And the guy was escorted out of the room and thrown out of the building, and the rest of the press just sat there and, okay, now we can ask questions. And that was several years ago, and here it is happening again. And at least this time, some of the media has come forward, and they've done different things to show support for CNN.
That's true. And a number of other press freedom advocacy groups are also cheering this ruling, saying that this was a major precedent that was set for future press, and that this wasn't just a win for Jim Acosta, but more importantly, it was a win for the Constitution and the enduring freedoms that it grants all of us. That was from Georgetown Law Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection. The ACLU had this to say: the White House surely hoped that expelling a reporter would deter forceful questioning, but the court's ruling will have the opposite effect. Most of the country's major news organizations have come to support CNN, including Fox, as we reported on yesterday's news, recognizing the White House may try to ban other reporters in the future. CNN has asked the court for permanent relief, meaning a declaration from the judge that Trump's revocation of Acosta's press pass was unconstitutional. This legal conclusion could protect other reporters from retaliation by this administration, but the judge will rule on all of that later. Further hearings are likely to take place in the next few weeks, according to CNN's lawyers. The White House took the unprecedented step of suspending access to Acosta after a combative exchange with Trump in the last week's post-midterm press conference. CNN privately sought a resolution before filing suit. Now, speaking with Robert Costa of the Washington Post live event on Thursday, White House communications official Mercedes Schlapp said press conferences have a certain decorum and suggested that Acosta had violated that, saying, quote, "In that particular incident, we weren't going to tolerate the bad behavior of this one reporter," she said, repeating the bad behavior claims several times. When Costa asked if the White House is considering yanking other press passes, Schlapp said, "I'm not going to get into any internal deliberations that are happening." In court on Wednesday, Justice Department lawyer James Burham argued that the Trump White House has the legal right to kick out any reporter at any time for any reason, a position that is a dramatic break from decades of tradition. While responding to hypotheticals from Kelly, Burham said that it would be perfectly legal for the White House to revoke a journalist's press pass if they didn't agree with the reporting as a matter of law. Can you believe that?
Wow. No, I can't believe that, because it means that they can decide that I don't like your question. I'm not going to answer that. And since you asked that question, you can no longer be here. You have to leave. Therefore, they're going to make sure that all the press coverage they get is based on what they want to say, and it's not going to be an open forum for the press to actually find out information. You know, when they do debates, they have rules. You know, they have some decorum in debates, but they have the timer. And if you ever watch when their time is up, a lot of times they keep on talking, and there's like, your time is up, and they keep on talking. They don't kick them out of the debate. Oh, you went over the time, you're out of the debate.
So do politicians.
Yeah, you know, and it's like, it's something that they want to control, and they're acting like they're a private club, like they don't have public accountability. And it's back to, that's the way they run this White House. That's the way that Trump is doing things every day, that he's his own boss, his own person. He's not accountable to anyone else. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do fewer press conferences. And also they might just, not call on people. And it's right now that their safest bet that they just don't take questions from some people and just take questions from who they want.
Maybe they'll put a giant clock up on the wall and say, you have 5 minutes to ask your question.
30 seconds.
The White House Correspondents Association, which represent reporters from scores of different outlets, said the government's stance is wrong and dangerous. Simply stated, the association's lawyers wrote in a brief on Thursday, if President Trump were to have the absolute discretion to strip a correspondent of a hard pass, the chilling effect would be severe, and the First Amendment protections afforded journalists to gather and report news on the activities of the president would be largely eviscerated. On Friday, the Correspondents Association welcomed Kelly's ruling and said, "We thank all of the news outlets and individual reporters who stood up in recent days for the vital role of free and independent news media playing in our republic."
Yeah, I don't, like you said earlier, the judge actually didn't rule on the First Amendment piece of this.
Not yet.
And hopefully the judge is taking time to word that properly, because it's a constitutional issue. And, it might end up going with appeals and going higher up. But also, we don't know how the judge is actually going to rule on this. We just don't know, but the injunction went into place. He has his press pass back, and he's back at work, and he's speaking tonight, I guess.
Unfortunately, I believe, Duke, that the president's administration is going to take CNN up on the proposal that they made to come to an agreement and remove this lawsuit, because it would be bad for this president, for this administration, to get a ruling against them. Trump is wrong. If they go back to court, if they remain in court, they will lose. Kelly has intuited as much.
Yep.
That's why he made this initial injunctive relief ruling in favor of CNN, because he believes they're going to win.
Yep.
And I believe that they would win too, and I believe that they should go for the win so that they can set precedent for the rest of the press.
That's a good point.
But I don't think they will. I think that instead the president will rescind his threats in order to save face, so that CNN will rescind their lawsuit. I hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
In other news, you may have heard that Michael Avenatti was arrested for felony assault charges against a woman, yet as unnamed. But he has come out stating that not only are the allegations false, but he, in a recent article in Heavy.com, appears to be blaming Jacob Wall for his arrest. Now, you may recall that the initial reporting on this, which was erroneous in part, said that in TMZ that he was arrested for assaulting his estranged wife.
Yes, yeah.
That was incorrect. Avenatti came out swinging after that on Twitter once he was released, and after making a public statement that the allegations were false and that he expected to be exonerated, saying that he would sue TMZ or whoever authorized putting this information in print. Michael Avenatti then has suggested more recently that Jacob Wall was behind a conspiracy that resulted in his arrest for domestic violence. That was less than 24 hours after TMZ broke the story that Avenatti was in LAPD custody over that incident. Avenatti tweeted, "Mr. Mueller, first Mueller, and now me. When we are fully exonerated, I'm coming for you, Jacob Wall, a.k.a. Surefire." What you may not know is that Jacob Wall is behind the company, the so-called investigative company called Surefire, and Surefire Investigations and Jacob Wall tweeted after the arrest of Michael Avenatti, "Surefire Investigations strikes again." Okay. And this was, of course, seen by everyone on Twitter, including Michael Avenatti. So the Surefire reference is the Surefire Intelligence, an opposition research firm owned and run by this 20-year-old named Jacob Wall. In October 2018, Wall denied having any connection to that agency in an interview with NBC News. In October and November, Jacob Wall attracted national attention after he said that a woman had contacted him claiming she'd been raped by Robert Mueller in 2010. Despite promising to produce an accuser, Wall never followed through on his accusations against Mueller, telling the media instead that the accuser had become scared for her life and would not go public. Jacob Wall was later accused by a woman of approaching her and offering to pay her $20,000 to make false claims against Robert Mueller. That is now under investigation by the FBI. Oh, boy. Jacob Wall is a former hedge fund manager who's, I believe, been barred from ever trading again because of his malfeasance. Yes. Who is a pro-Trump conspiracy theorist and has been, of course, most recently being investigated for his claims against Robert Mueller. Wall was quick to respond on Twitter to Avenatti, writing, "Michael, she hit me first, Avenatti, is now blaming me for the fact that he was arrested for brutally beating a woman. This guy is a sicko. Also chiming in was Wool's father, lawyer David Wool, who retweeted Avenatti's claim while commenting, quote, "I'm sure you'll have no objection to the release of police reports in your case, Mike. Also, the photo of your victim's face. I'm sure we'll be hearing from her soon, and I'm sure she won't say it's Jacob's fault." He later added, "Michael Avenatti seems to believe that I am responsible for him raising his hand to a woman. I am not. Will he release the pictures of his battered victim?" While conservative activist Laura Loomer also retweeted Avenatti's original message and added, "Did you know that Jacob Wall and Michael Avenatti attended the same gym?" In TMZ's initial story regarding Avenatti's arrest, the gossip site said that the alleged victim had been Avenatti's estranged wife, Lisa Story. His arrest was confirmed by LAPD, who said that Avenatti was held on $50,000 bond. Upon his release, Avenatti credited the LAPD for professionalism during the incident, calling the charges completely bogus and saying they were fabricated and meant to do harm to his reputation. Of course, Avenatti is best known for representing porn star Stormy Daniels, who alleges she had an affair with President Donald Trump in 2006.
Wow, I've been following this, we've been following this, and, we're yet to see what's going to happen with it next. But, as they've shown, in fact, when TMZ said that he had abused his estranged wife, she came forward and said, "No, that's not true. He's never abused me. They have problems, but it's not about physical abuse." And then his previous wife came forward and said he'd never abused me and he would never abuse a woman. So these character witnesses, and actually one that was claimed to be the victim, have come forward and said that this could not happen, didn't happen to them. And that's given a lot of steam to look directly into what's going on here. I'm not sure how it's going to be resolved, and we'll hear about it with Avenatti. We will hear what's happened, and then he's going to go after that dude because it's like, and the other people who have basically slandered him.
Right. I mean, I tweeted that they kicked the wrong hornet's nest on this one because Avenatti, when this news story first came out, I said to you, Duke, well, he's a lawyer. I think it would be really stupid to make false, allegations and get a lawyer arrested when it's not true, because he's definitely going to sue you over that. You've damaged his reputation by having him arrested on felony charges for which he could be disbarred. Mm-hmm. He has no recourse as an attorney other than to defend himself, or he will no longer be able to practice the law.
Exactly.
This is a direct assault on his career. He has not only a defamation case, he has a slander and libel case as well. And he did tweet, whomever wrote and approved that TMZ article better get their checkbook ready, because it was purposely malicious and false. It was designed to harm Lisa, me, and my family, and we're going to expose TMZ for what they did. No journalist should rely on or defend garbage like that.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I looked at TMZ after this stuff came out, and I said, "What is TMZ putting this out for, anyways? It's full of videos, and it's not like this news breaking website, but this got coverage and got spread around the world as soon as they put it out."
Do you recall one of the most widely reported TMZ stories that came up recently? It involved Kanye. Remember?
Oh, okay, yeah.
They interviewed Kanye West.
Mm-hmm.
Trump-loving, Trump-supporting, or at least he used to be.
Yeah, so he took his meds.
Kanye West.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he said the crazy thing about slavery being
a choice.
Yeah,
okay.
I think that this does not bode well for Levin, who runs TMZ, who is also a lawyer. He's famously also produced The People's Court.
Okay.
Harvey Levin is always standing outside asking people questions.
Oh, that guy. Okay.
During the People's Court.
Uh-huh.
That's the same guy that runs TMZ.
Oh.
He knows the law. He understands the law. I'm wondering, I can understand why someone like Pecker, who ran the National Enquirer, would, carry Trump's water for him, because he's, the guy that runs National Enquirer. Mm-hmm. That's what they do over there, is sling mud.
Yeah, they're tabloid.
And TMC, to a certain degree, is a gossip site. It is a tabloid-like. But Levin is an attorney.
Wow.
He knows better. I believe one of the reasons why TMZ hasn't been sued into oblivion thus far is because Levin is an attorney, a savvy one at that, and knows what to print and how to print it to avoid lawsuits. But I think on this instance, he really stuck his foot in it. Well, finally, CBS is reporting Trump has finished answering the written questions from Robert Mueller. His take-home test is now complete. Trump said, I just finished answering written questions from Mueller, but I haven't submitted them yet.
What? The dog could eat them, before he hands them in.
Oh, God, I hope not. And he also said on Friday that he, finished answering the written questions posed to him by Special Counsel Robert Mueller as part of the investigation into the Russian interference of the 2016 elections. But the president strongly denied the claims that his lawyers were the ones completing the answers for him. The whole reason why his lawyers, including Don McGahn, who recently left the White House, would not allow him to sit down with Robert Mueller was because they believed there was no humanly possible way that Trump wouldn't perjure himself.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, it's hard to read them when you write with a crayon,
Do you really think that he answered a single one of these questions on his own?
I've seen him in press conferences. I've seen his speeches. He can't string together a sentence. It would be like one sentence long. Nope. Denied. Not true.
He's had Michael Cohen and Rudy Giuliani lying for him throughout his presidency and answering his questions and carrying water for him. I can't imagine that why he would deny that he would use every available attorney assistance that he could get, attorney's counsel that he could get on this.
In these questions, some people are speculating or said that they had some sort of access to some of the White House lawyers that were saying that he's not going to answer this string of questions. We're only going to answer questions that deal with this, but not with that. So lawyers are communicating that what will be interesting if and when we actually see the answers to the questions and the questions themselves.
Trump also reiterated his frequent criticism of the investigation, saying it was a waste of millions and millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah. He's always concerned about all the money that, he's a businessman, he's running the country as a business.
This after today's report that Melania Trump spent over $170,000 on a recent trip to Toronto where she didn't even spend the night. And of course, we know about all of the golfing trips to Mar-a-Lago that have cost the taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. Well, remember that Mississippi Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, who released a statement recently about her poor choice of words when she made comments that a cattle rancher she was campaigning with, she would go anywhere he went, saying, if he invited me to a public hanging, I'd be in the front row. Remember her?
Yep.
She had to put out a public statement saying that she referred to accepting an invitation to a speaking engagement. In referencing the one who invited me, I used an exaggerated expression of regard, and any attempt to turn it into a negative connotation is ridiculous. They're trying to deflect from the racist implications of her saying that if he invited her to a lynching, which is, of course, associated with killing black people, that she would love to go. Well, more recently, she also put her foot in her mouth again in a Twitter post from Lamar White Jr. It said that Cindy Hyde-Smith was talking about voter suppression with a group of students and said this, and they remind me that there's a lot of liberal folks in those other schools, she's referring to colleges that are majority black, who that maybe we don't want to vote. Maybe we want to make it just a little more difficult, and I think that's a great idea. She said this on November 30th, in this town of Starkville.
Yeah. Boy.
Also from Twitter, Secret Agent number 6 reported that nationalist Stephen King of Iowa was reelected with the help of none other than Tyson Foods, one of the major employers of Mexicans in Iowa and in the Midwest, in the entire Midwest. They're the largest producers of meat packagers in the country. And they have donated to his re-election campaign. This has prompted people on Twitter to call for a boycott of Tyson until they stop funding him. MarketWatch.com has previously reported that Republican Stephen King had lost two other corporate sponsors, pet food company Purina and chip maker Intel Inc., as well as the Land O'Lakes dairy company, all of whom have pulled their financial contributions over his incendiary racial remarks. Well, what do you think of Stephen King and this Cindy Hyde-Smith, representatives in our Congress that are openly racist nationalists, talking about lynching black people, suppressing the vote? This, as we are watching the most naked aggression against voters in the states like Florida and Georgia. How are these people so comfortable? Why do we see so much of this rhetoric ramping up all across the country?
Well, people think they can. I think Trump has set that precedence that he could, you can just say the racist stuff that you believe and put it out there, and you can still get elected and you can still run this country because he's been leading the charge in that, and he's made it okay. And I think people have went so far backwards on trying to become anti-racist and trying to really change our society away from the racism and institutional racism, that these folks are just slipping right in, and we're letting them do that. And there's a lot of, this new great hope of these new legislators that are going to change the country. Many of them have these same qualities.
And, this is not probably the first time these folks have made these comments. As we know, Stephen King has retweeted white nationalists. He recently made a trip to Austria to meet up with Nazis to learn the history of Nazis, returning only to say that if Nazis were running politically today, they would be Republicans. Yeah. He equated the Republican Party with Nazis, and the Republicans still support him. And yet, even though they still support rabid racists like King and the Cindy Hyde-Smith and others, they claim, or people in the media and the country claim, that they feel that Trump may go too far in his racial comments and spark some kind of consciousness inside of the GOP that will finally make them reject him or make them call him on the carpet. I don't see any evidence of that. If Cindy Hyde, the reactions to Cindy Hyde-Smith and Republican Stephen King are any indicators, Trump has nothing to worry about. What are your thoughts?
No, none of the Republicans are going to bail. They are under, they will get nothing done, nothing passed unless they play party lines and take their whole, their work from the top. They're not going to object. They're not going to do anything. They risk their, be political suicide. So none of them are going to bail.
Sadly, I agree with you. Well, to get more news and information like this, posts, comments, and more, go to facebook.com/Mexican Online or facebook.com/People's Press Project and facebook.com/KPPP Radio. You can also find all of our podcasts and stories at kpppfm.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at media_PPP. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Duke 1517. That's your daily rundown.